And Nick Saban had their 7th number 1 ranked recruiting class in the 14 years that Nick Saban has been at Alabama. We'll also be joined after that by Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers, talking about their recruiting class, kind of a different perspective. That's a school, one of the 4 in the SEC, along with Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Tennessee, that made a coaching change. And with the December early signing period, it has completely changed what it means to make a coaching change, because it can really, really hurt you in recruiting, because this past Wednesday, February 3rd, National Signing Day, is nothing like it used to be. I mean, it's like having a Betamax when everybody else has an iPhone. It's completely different. Joined by 4 o'clock, another one of our favorites, Jimmy Ott from ESPN 104.5 down in Baton Rouge, talking LSU and SEC and pro football, the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. And then at 4:30, going to be joined by a really special guest we've had on the show a number of times in the last year, Mr. Jim Tunney, former head of NFL officials, the dean of referees, lives out in Pebble Beach, California, on a beautiful estate there. He lost his best friend this past summer, former Miami Dolphins, Baltimore Colts, Hall of Fame coach Don Shula. Jim Tunney, from 1960 into the early 90s, refereed over 500 games, 3 Super Bowls. He refereed for coaches with names like Lombardi, Hallis, Knoll, Landry, Walsh, Shula. A lot of great stories. We'll be covering a lot. Jimmy Hodge will be on with us in the second hour. Jake Crane, host of the J-Boy podcast, is over in Atlanta right now, and got some great things coming on board with Jake Crane. He'll be joining us. A lot to cover. Bottom line, thank you to everybody that is listening. And I want to say this real quick. Had an opportunity last night. My wife and I were over in Wynn, Arkansas last night at one of our favorite restaurants, Hot Stone. That is a really fun place to go. And ran into somebody really cool last night. It was an interesting conversation during trivia. And one of these days we're going to win trivia. I always like to quote my dad, boy, you got a vast storehouse of useless knowledge in that brain. You need to find a way to turn that into money. One of these days we will win trivia. We changed our last question, ironically, last night, cost us 30 points. We would have finished second. It was 60 questions. We were not there for the first 26 questions, and we almost caught the people. So that's a lot of fun. But ran into a guy named Seth Jenkins. They're talking about golf. And this is a great story. Seth works he's the golf pro at Village Creek State Park between Wynn and Parkin, right there on Highway 64. Now, I've always done the Mighty Mike Triathlon over there over the years. It's a flat swim, of course. Get on your bike, knock out a 13 miles and a 5K run. You don't realize what a beautiful state park that is. 27-hole championship golf course designed by Andy Dye, Pete Dye's nephew. Is 45 minutes from downtown Memphis. And most people think of, East Arkansas as flat farmland, and it is. Where I am in Parkin, we're surrounded by rice fields, bean fields, a little bit of corn, not too much cotton, but it is beautiful over there up on Crowley's Ridge. I'm looking at it right now. Elevation changes. Each hole is surrounded in nature. You're not going to get many looks like this on a golf course in this part of the country. You'll see a lot of wildlife. There are deer everywhere on this golf course. If you come out in the fall, the foliage is absolutely beautiful. Look, they're located at Village Creek State Park. Also has a lot of options. You've got 2 big lakes for fishing, kayaking, paddle boating, horse trails, hiking trails, biking trails, playgrounds. Check out the website at The Ridge at villagecreekgolf.com. That is the ridges at villagecreekgolf.com. So if you're interested in a tee time, contact the golf shop to book your tee time. So, hey, great place to go over. It is absolutely beautiful. And hey, a lot of Razorback fans. I'm going to tell you one thing. You get in the state of Arkansas, and I would love to see them, by the way. One day, Arkansas State and Arkansas start playing everybody every year, having a game at War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock. I think that would be a lot of fun. Look, Rodney Orr will be joining us here in just a second. We're going to talk about that Alabama recruiting class. Also want to say this, Super Bowl coming up this weekend. Tom Brady left the Patriots last year. Bill Belichick the greatest coach in NFL history. A lot of people were like, really, he's going to Tampa? Gronk and some of his former players that he had played with the Patriots and won Super Bowls with joined him. The Patriots didn't have much of a year this year. Cam Newton took over, backed up by Jarrett Stidham, two Auburn guys. Wasn't much. Tom Brady makes everybody around him better. He has a chance Sunday to win his 7th Super Bowl as an NFL quarterback. Not too bad for a Bay Area kid from California who was a, 6th or 7th round draft pick out of Michigan. Drew Bledsoe was injured. Brady took over. He's never looked back. It's unbelievable. And even better for the Buck fans is that this game, the Super Bowl, will be played at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. We know about reduced crowd sizes and all like that, but it's still the Super Bowl. So it's going to be a lot of fun as we get into the show, talking with Jim Tunney later in the broadcast about the Super Bowl, what it's like. Again, he had the honor, the privilege of officiating 3 Super Bowls, and just some of the funny stories that he'll talk about, especially the one I love. This, put it in relative terms, Vince Lombardi had one of his best players on the team who wanted a new contract for $7,000 a year. Lombardi said, "I'm not going a penny above 6,500." The player said 7,000. He said, "All right, pack your stuff. See ya." Nobody out there can't be replaced. That's how it happens. In the NFL, look, it's more and more amazing to me. The game changes, but these are the best football players on the planet. You keep going up the pecking order, high school to college, in the NFL, and look at all these SEC kids that have come up there. University of Memphis has had a number of players. D'Angelo Williams from Wynn, Arkansas, huge duck hunter, turkey hunter, rabbit hunter, bird hunter, great sportsman. Bottom line, when you look around at what's going on right now, college football, college basketball, NFL, we've got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. We are working our way through the virus, okay? I've said this all along. Last year, the narrative, there won't be any football, there'll be nothing. Well, I always believed we would do it. If you can conceive it, you can believe it, you can achieve it, all right? Bottom line, now the mantra that I keep saying is, we can't continue to tread water forever. We've got to be swimming back to shore, and that's what we're doing. And I think that as more and more people get vaccines and what have you, athletic directors are going to start thinking maybe we can start letting more people come to the games. I'm optimistic, but that's the only way to be. You better look on the bright side of things, because otherwise you're looking at the wrong place. That's just how I see it. But this past week, recruiting, we did several podcasts during the week. Jake Crane, again, will be on here with us shortly. We're going to talk more about it. But Jimmy Hodge and I talked about what schools of the 4, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Auburn, and Tennessee, who made coaching changes, would be able to help themselves the most in recruiting. Tennessee held on. Their recruiting class finished ranked number 16, 24/7 composite sports rankings. Vanderbilt had a top 50 class with Clark Lee, the new coach. I don't remember Vandy having a class ranked that high. I can't ever remember it. So that's a good sign. I would like to see Vanderbilt rededicate themselves to winning in football. I think they had a heck of a coach, Derek Mason, who's now the defensive coordinator at Auburn. But if you're not committed 110%, you're really just wasting your time. You can't half-ass it in the SEC, or you will be just crushed. You cannot compete. You can be 4th or 5th best recruiting class, or 7th or 8th best in the country, yet be 5th in the SEC. It's kind of like saying I'm the tallest midget in the room. This is the most competitive league, the most competitive division in all of sports, college or pro, and that is the SEC West. Nick Saban, you can say whatever you want about him. He makes his players better. He hires coaches that develop talent. He works them harder. He starts by recruiting the best. Hey, you want the best food? Go get the best vegetables. Go to the best winery. Go get the best meat, chicken, fish. It's not that complicated. You can say whatever you want about Nick Saban, but this is a guy who's not even thinking about slowing down. In fact, I think he's motivated because a lot of people are going to probably want to say, well, he won that 7th national championship in the year of the virus. It doesn't matter. It's the same schools right now that are curb stomping everybody else in college football. And it has been for the last 6 or 7 years. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, they got in there this year. They played Alabama, a much better game. But look, if you want to have a great football program, you have to pay to play. Okay. You're going to have to invest a lot of money, a lot of time. And if you don't do it, nothing is going to happen. And bottom line, if you think about the schools that dominate, they make the financial investment. Look at Auburn. They're about to, bottom line, spend $95 to $100 million on a new football-only facility at Auburn, 233,000 square feet. Well, that's great. Alabama's already got one. Georgia's got one. LSU's got one. Better late than never. But it is an arms race. And in recruiting, you bring these kids on campus, and in the last year, it's been difficult. But you know what? Necessity is the mother of all invention, and the learning curve gets shortened quickly when money's on the line, recruiting, and your job's on the line. So for all of you out there that have a lot of wishful thinking that college football would fail, college basketball would fail, there'll be no NCAA tournament, you know what? Why don't you put your lip over your head and swallow and do us all a favor? Because college sports aren't going anywhere, and you've got to give credit to the athletes, Division I, Division II, Division III, the trainers, the managers, the coaches, the counselors, strength and conditioning, director of equipment operations. Again, I refer to him a lot. Dana Marquez at Auburn. He's a frequent guest on the show. 16 years. He started 5 companies on the side since he's been there. Helmetfitting.com being one of them. Look, concussions, that's a big deal. That's hurt participation on the youth level in football for years. But you know what's happened? Schools are retrofitting the helmets. They're spending $1,800, $2,000 a helmet to make them safer. Okay? You go back and you talk to people that played in the old days without a face mask, like my dad broke his nose 4 times that he knows of. Okay? You learned how to tackle right. You weren't stupid. You didn't just put your head in the wrong places. But also think that we got to be very careful about making football and emasculating the game. I mean, a game now, 3.5 or 4 hours in the Southeastern Conference, or, whether you're in Memphis or if you're in Jonesboro, it doesn't matter. And there's these 3.5, 4 hour games with these ridiculous delays where they look at every possible angle. It's torture. Okay. Football is a violent game. Don't try and make it to where we're going to have to put dresses on the quarterbacks. Okay. We have no leadership to speak of in the NCAA. Okay. They're headquartered in Indianapolis. It's run by the Big Ten people for the most part. And they're the ones that tried not to have football this year after they took the cue from Superpower Mid-America Conference. And then after that, Olive Oil and friends in the Pac-12, they opted out. They didn't even start their season until November. Listen up and listen good. The Southeastern Conference, the Big 12, American Athletic Conference, the Sun Belt, the ACC, they're the ones. And Trevor Lawrence, quarterback at Clemson, they're the ones who spearheaded it and pushed it. Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, has no business being a commissioner of a conference like the Big Ten. Jim Delaney, legendary commissioner, built that conference up, built that brand up. And what Kevin Warren did, I think, was blow up and destroy 40 or 50 years worth of goodwill and all that the Big Ten had built up. But what they really learned was they're not in charge and they don't control the narrative. That narrative is controlled by the schools in the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC. Okay. And joining us now, one of our favorite guests, one of the good guys out there, Texas native from Corpus Christi, which in Spanish means body of Christ, Alabama, 25 years, the editor, producer of Tider Insider, the source for Crimson Tide sports. one of the good people out there, one of the more knowledgeable people out there, Rodney Orr. And Rodney, hey, welcome to Sidelines.
Rob, I apologize for being late, buddy.
Hey, look, I was reading, you had a lot going on, and thank you, and keeping grandson in our prayers. Hope everything goes well, and just glad to have you on here. And hey, look, surprise, Nick Saban and Alabama have another number one ranked recruiting class in the 24/7 composite. They'll continue to stay at the top of the blue chip index, which is that 4-year, measuring stick of how many 4- and 5-star players on the roster. Alabama signed 7 5-stars, more than anybody in the country. Tell me something new on this thing, because it just is, it blows the mind, but the only easy day in Tuscaloosa was yesterday.
Well, you remember a few years ago when they signed Devontae Smith out of the state of Louisiana.
I meet Louisiana.
That particular class, they signed 6 out of the state of Louisiana. They gutted the state, 6 of the top 8 or 9 players in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah. Okay,
so this year, Rob, we did this on signing day right after Terrion Arnold announced his decision, had it ready to go. The Texas-Florida impact on this class. Of Alabama's 27 signees, 14, 7 are from Florida, 7 are from Texas. Of that group, 6 are 5-star players. Think about that. Alabama's 4 receivers signed in this class, which may be the best receiver group in the country, certainly among the best receiver groups in the country. Mm-hmm. 3 are from Florida, 1 is from Texas. Of their offensive line class, they signed a 5-man offensive line class. 3 are from Texas, and 1 is from Florida. 2 of those guys, Tommy Brockemeyer and J.C. Latham, 1 from Florida, 1 from Texas, are 5-star players. You get my drift.
Yeah.
Those 2 states had a significant impact on this recruiting class.
Yeah. Rodney, you go back 8 years ago. I remember the Iron Bowl, what they call the mother of all Iron Bowls, turned out to be the Kick Six, but both teams ranked in the top 4 at that time. And on the rosters of both Auburn and Alabama, they had players from between 15 and 20 different states. They recruit nationally, but really in the case of Alabama, the way they're doing, when you've won 6 national championships in the 14 years Nick Saban's been at Alabama, they don't really recruit. They just choose. And it's, to me, there was something I saw this week. Look, don't go to Alabama or you'll never play. The best players all think they're going to start. And I think that just Alabama builds off of that. Nick Saban feeds off of that. And he loves to tell these kids, hey, if you're man enough, sign with Alabama. If you're not, go somewhere else. We'll whip your butt.
Well, I think they look for the right fit, obviously. And I think part of what you're saying there is a characteristic they look for, guys who are confident, guys who are competitors. And that's one thing I like, for example, about Terrion Arnold, the safety, the 5-star safety out of Tallahassee. His coach noted to us, said Georgia's telling him that he could possibly come in and start from Richard LeCounte's spot. But Alabama's not telling him he can start. They're telling him he can come in and compete. And he said, this kid being told he can start doesn't faze him a bit. That's not really what he's looking to hear. He's more interested in how are you going to develop me? Okay, and that's the difference, is Nick Saban tells you how they're going to develop you, what they can do for you, show them the track record, show them players at your position, what they've done with those kids and how they put them in positions to be successful, and then how they ultimately were drafted or the awards that they've won, whatever it is. So I think that's the difference, the approach that Nick Saban has. And that really, in this case, with Terrion Arnold and others, surely, that certainly paid dividends in the way they recruited. So, again, like you said, it's a good class. I don't know about this greatest ever that a lot of people are talking about. That's a lot of hype. I think, again, it goes back to, are you filling your needs with quality players and the kind of players that fit your system?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's recruiting for a football or basketball team, for a business, for the military. you've got to get the right fits. And, you don't want to take guys that are lazy and get them to join the Marine Corps. I mean, maybe a recruiter's slick enough to get them to join, but I actually saw this at Fort Benning, by the way, when I was a reporter down there, Rodney, for Channel 3, WRBL, 30 years ago. There were guys that had been recruited, joined the Army, and couldn't do a pull-up, couldn't do a push-up. And they put them in the fitness training unit, the FTU, and they would just rejoin 3, 4, 5 weeks later with another platoon, but they weren't ready. The kind of guys that Alabama's recruiting are the kind of people that make an impact. I mean, again, there's maybe 33, 34 5-star rated players in the country in any given year. And look at the top 5 recruiting classes. Alabama, number 1, signed 7 5-stars. Georgia, second best, signed 4. You had Clemson signed 3. LSU signed a couple. Oregon signed 1 or 2. So you basically had Ohio State signed, I think, 4. So 22, 23 of the 33 5-stars went to those 6 schools. And then Southern Cal,
Rob,
Texas
let me. That's a great point, what you're saying. Let me give you a little something here. I'm sure you probably got some Georgia fans listening that won't want to hear this. Kirby Smart I think he signed 25 5-star players since he's been at Georgia. I think that's the statistic. Mm-hmm. You know how many of those guys have made first-team All-American?
2.
Consensus first-team All-American, 0.
But yeah, I was going to say, well, yeah, I'm looking at it. That's unbelievable. Not one of them has made consensus All-American.
First team, consensus first team.
Yeah.
That's the statistic. So
good.
I'm sure, there's some that have made various teams, but it's, again, it's all about development. It's all about player development. And I think that, that's the key. And when I say that, look, this isn't about just Alabama. These are programs other programs that recruit solid players, good players. Maybe they're not the most highly ranked recruiting class, but these coaches that can develop players, that's why they can be successful. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have all these 5-stars or several 5-stars. That it's the coaches that have the programs that know how to develop players that are successful, get the right kind of. Dabo's done it for years. He's not until the last few years. Dabo would have that number 10, 12, 15 rated class, but he would get the right mix of players that fit their system. He would have a great quarterback, and have a great running back and a couple of players here and there sprinkled in. But that was kind of his way of doing it. And they've had a tremendous amount of success, not necessarily having the number 1 class per se. It's all about, like I said, development.
Well, you go back. An example in basketball, Villanova, when Jay Wright took over, the first 3 years, I think they signed a total of 5 kids in basketball that were rated 5-star. And look at their success. It was about 500. Okay. They realized at Villanova, they weren't recruiting the right kids that fit Villanova, that understood this is a small, private Catholic university in the middle of a big city, Philadelphia. Okay. And then they started getting kids that fit the program. And I know Villanova won a couple of national championships. I remember April of 2016 because I won the betting thing at the office. And I took Villanova to go all the way. You got to get the right fit. And that statistic about Georgia, 25 5-stars. Kirby took over in December of 2015. And every recruiting class he's had has been top 5. You've got the 4th most talent-rich state in America, Rodney. And again, they're bringing a lot of talent in there. The East is not as strong as the West from top to bottom. Bottom line, your offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, going into next year, everybody's going to pick Georgia to win the East. And without Sam Pittman being there to coach the offensive line, I'm sorry, you're not ever going to convince me that Matt Luke, who was an okay offensive line coach when he was an assistant at Ole Miss, became the head coach just because It was the easy thing to do because they knew that he loved Ole Miss and wouldn't have to pay him a lot of money after the Hugh Freeze disaster. Okay. And he's now the offensive line coach at Georgia. He's not anywhere close to the offensive line coach that Sam Pittman was. And if you can't develop on the offensive line, this is a line of scrimmage league. The SEC is. You're never going to have near the success that you think you're going to have in spite of all those five-star players. Great. I agree with you, Rodney, 100%.
No, I think you're right. You hit it on the head, too. And I think that's one area where, Georgia specifically, you mentioned Sam Pittman. That was obviously a big blow because he was such a tremendous offensive line coach. But, yeah, I mean, I think as you start to look forward to next year, you mentioned the East being really weak. If you're a Georgia fan, you should expect to walk into Atlanta at this point. I would say that anyway, as I look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really now, obviously they opened with Clemson. That'll be an interesting game in Charlotte, as you look forward.
Yeah.
And I think as you look at Alabama's schedule, two things that jump out at me, well, really three, if you want to look at the bigger picture, you would say you go on the road at Texas A&M, which A&M thinks they're continuing to take the next step, and they've got a lot of guys coming back on the defensive side, and I think they think they're going to be okay at quarterback with probably Haynes King, although they have a little competition going. But you look at that, and then you look at going to Florida. I mean, I don't really have a read on Florida because I don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be with Emory Jones or the Richardson kid. That'll be an interesting team to watch, but Alabama has to go on the road there. And then at the end of the year, of course, going on the road to Auburn.
Yeah.
So that's really what I look at Alabama's schedule. You got LSU coming here. You got Tennessee coming here. So, it's going to be an interesting schedule. As for Auburn, I think the interesting thing I thought about them was going to Penn State. That's going to be a pretty good trip for them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it will be. Look, the SEC, look around you. Every school in the SEC was in the top 50 in recruiting with the exception of South Carolina. They finished like 71st. Vanderbilt was even in the top 50. But it's how many that are in the top 5. Mm-hmm. Alabama 1, Georgia, I think 3, LSU 5, and then A&M at 7, and Florida at 13 surprises me. But Dan Mullen, I've never really thought he was a great recruiter, but he's a hell of a quarterback coach and can take any quarterback and turn them into a winner. Look at the resume. It speaks for itself. But Georgia, you're right. Next year with JT Daniel and the team they've got, they should expect to walk into Atlanta. And if I'm Florida, I'm concerned when, was it 20 or 25 guys quit? Don't use that deadgum. Yeah. I'm sick of this term, opting out. Again, in a court of law, I would love to do this. I would love to walk in there to my brother-in-law, 26 years in the Marine Corps, and say, hey, Kurt, were you given the option to opt out the night before you all took Fallujah? I thought that was crickets. That wasn't it, Rodney? It was just, look, that's the kind of commitment I'm talking about. And don't give me this, well, that's the way kids are these days. I've got 3 children, 2 boys, 20 and 22, and a 24-year-old daughter. I expect nothing more than their best in everything they do. That's all I ask for. But this opt-out term, call it what it is, quitting. The transfer portal, it's basically a conduit and a sewer for a bunch of unhappy, griping, sniveling little brats that can't hack it, okay? Now, there's going to be guys that make it, but look at the statistics. Hell, 50% of marriages, just the first time marriages fail. 60% of second marriages fail. Look at the transfer portal. How many superstars have emerged that left one program and went to another? A lot of these kids transfer 2 or 3 times. Okay? Look at the numbers. We're making it easy for people to quit. And
Absolutely. I think we're sending the wrong message, with this deal.
I do too. Hold. Let me say this. I want to say this real quick. Rodney,
you can transfer one.
Yeah, Rodney. Let me just hang on for just a second. We've got Justin Wynn, one of our sponsors, on real quick from Red River
Sure.
Ford Toyota over in Wynn, Arkansas. And Justin, want to say again, thanks for being a sponsor of Sidelines Friday afternoon, talking a lot of college football and recruiting and Super Bowl weekend and all. But let's focus again. The first hour, let's talk about what's going on the Ford side of Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. And then we'll talk about Toyota in the second hour because it's a win-win deal. This is one of those deals where 1 and 1 equals 3. Welcome, Justin Wynn.
Thank you, Rob. So we're having a pretty great day here. The weather is nice. The sun is shining. People are out here on the lot looking at cars, in there buying cars. And it's just been a good day all the way around. Ford has absolutely started to pump us with some inventory. We've got some good selection of trucks out here, F-150s, F-250s. I've got some great selection of Mustangs. I've got good Explorers. I mean, it's really a good thing going on here today.
Tell me this. A lot of people, of course, I grew up with it, and so did Rodney, and you did too, the Ford Bronco. That's on the menu right now. Are you going to be able to get any of those? Because I've had a lot of people saying, will Red River Ford Toyota have the Ford Bronco coming out?
So we will have the Ford Bronco coming out. The 2021 models are all spoken for, though. So it'll be a little difficult to have the availability of those right off the bat, but we will have some, and more than likely we'll have a customer or two back out. So we'll have the 1 or 2 sitting here. And you're right, it's hot on the menu. You can't seem to, everybody seems to want one, and we're really excited about it when it hits here.
Hey, tell me something else. I drive an F-150. I absolutely love it. And the 21 F-150s, the F-250 Power Strokes, depending on what you want. If you're going off-road, what's your best recommendation for someone who does a lot of off-road work? And then the best recommendation for someone who does a lot of hauling? Because, again, a lot of our listeners, they go back and forth, pulling boats up to the lake at Heber Springs, go right by you on Highway 64 there in Wynn, which is only 45 minutes from Memphis. If you're on I-40, get off at the Forest City exit, go 15 minutes north to Wynn. But give me your pick on the best for each of those. And what's the one that's the best for everything?
So the FX4 F-150 is what you're going to want to look at if you're looking at an off-road, if you're going to be doing some, taking it through the hunting clubs or just some off-road work, maybe through the fields or whatever the case may be. The FX4 package gives you a little bit heavier suspension, gives you some skid plates underneath to protect the transmission and drivetrain from things that may come up, whether you run over a stump or just hit a deep levee or whatever the case may be. The FX4 package is what you're going to be looking at. And then if you're going to do some hauling, obviously you want to look at that F250. The payload's unbelievable on it. And with that Power Stroke diesel engine, you ought to be able to pull the core out of the center of the earth. I mean, if you're not doing a lot of heavy hauling, the F-150 will get the job done. If you're just talking about pulling your boat for the weekend, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 times a year, you'd probably be fine with an F-150 depending on the size of your boat. But if you're doing a lot of heavy hauling, if you're pulling a track hoe, if you're pulling any type of heavy equipment, strap it onto this F-250 and let the dog eat.
All right. One more question before we let you go. What about the guy that's out there and says, hey, I'd love to get one of those new trucks or cars or SUVs over at Red River Ford Toyota. I've got a trade-in. I've got a 16 or a 17 model. What opportunities are there for the trade-ins?
Well, there's a lot of opportunities for the trade-ins. We've been speaking over the last couple of weeks about how trade-in values are absolutely the best I've ever seen them. I've seen the book value actually go up on these vehicles over the course of the last year due to supply and demand of the new vehicles. So again, if you've just been thinking about getting a value on your trade-in, you might want to go ahead and jump on that before the manufacturers really pump up production again and get the new vehicles flowing. Because once that happens, the used market's going to come down simply because of supply and demand. And if you just want a value on your trade-in, real simple. You go to our website, you can call us. We'll give you that. No harm, no foul, no obligation. It's not a problem. I'll be more than happy to tell you what your trade-in is worth right now.
All right. Listen, Justin Wynn, the general manager, Red River Ford Toyota over in win Arkansas. And want to say this, that bottom line, you can get the process started. Go online, check out Red River Ford Toyota. You can do a lot of the work. And when you get there, it can take you less than 15 minutes to get the keys and drive off the lot. Justin, we'll talk to you at 4:30 from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. Thank you. You bet. Okay, Rodney, real quick before we let you go, how do people subscribe to Tide Insider and follow you? Because I know you're the source for Crimson Tide Sports.
Well, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There's an address there to check, and gives you all our premium information. Also, our All Sports Forum, where it's a great community of Alabama fans. A lot of stuff flowing on that All Sports Forum. Going to have a recruiting update later tonight. Already looking forward to next year, but also this Alabama class might not be done yet. You may have another 5-star on the horizon.
Wow, it's just, I mean, it's not an accident, but keep us posted on that. But listen, Rodney, thank you so much for joining us on Sidelines.live Friday podcast, and look forward to having you on here again very soon. And always enjoy having you. Lots of great information. Again, that statistic so far of the day, 25 5-stars have signed with Georgia since Kirby's been there, and none of them have made the consensus All-American first team. That's a statistic that could be a series of podcasts. So that'll be interesting. But look, have a great weekend, Rodney Orr of Tide Insider.
I appreciate it, Rob.
You bet.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. Jason Caldwell's on here with us right now inside the Auburn Tigers. And Jason, let's do this. Audrey, my producer / wife over here at the Cherry Farm in Parkin, Arkansas. Let's take a quick commercial break from some of our sponsors, and we'll be back with Jason Caldwell of Inside the Auburn Tigers talking about recruiting, basketball, baseball is about to kick off here, softball, you name it. He's going to be able to talk about it. This is the Friday afternoon Sidelines.live podcast. We'll be with you till 5 p.m. Central. Thank you. Jason, I'll be right back, okay? Yeah, okay. Jason, I'll be right back with you, okay?
All right.
Okay. Let me go. Oops. Oh, man. Alex, come on. Oops.
Yeah, you kept saying the bottom line, the bottom line. I guess you were looking at your phone in the beginning.
Here, put him in like this. Okay, hold on. Okay, how much longer if we come back on?
About a minute.
Okay. Hey, Jason. Hey, thanks for calling in. What's been I know you put out some great stuff on this recruiting, but and I asked Cameron this, was talking to him yesterday off the air. The fans, what's been the reaction? He said most people just realize, hell, the coaches weren't even, Harsin wasn't hired till what, the 21st, 22nd of December?
Well, we had him on Christmas Eve is when we had a press conference with him. So it was like 2 days before, maybe the 22nd, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so look, and that tells you the strength of Auburn. We'll talk about that in a second. It's just statistically, what are we finished, 29th, 28th? Well, with
yeah. And
that
still have a chance to maybe get, I don't know how it would factor in Dylan Brooks. If you get him or some of those guys, I guess they would factor in this class.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would work.
Okay. We'll talk to you. Yeah. We're about to go back on the air. Let's talk about that. That's what I was going to ask you. That's huge because Jarquez Hunter, just committed. So that's big. Okay. 15 seconds. Okay. 30 seconds. Okay. Yeah. But thank you for keeping everybody updated, man. I look at that site all the time. You know, were you at the basketball game the other night?
Yeah, that's the only one I'll be at all year.
Wow.
Yep, the only one.
Yeah. I mean, is it just hard to go to them or just not? I mean,
There's only 11 media spots
good
total
God.
for home and visitors.
Okay.
And I did
Okay,
it.
okay.
I took
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you on the Friday afternoon edition of the Sidelines.live website. And also remember, follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Again, that is at Sidelines_live. And of course, the website, www.sidelines.live. Look, we're really, really glad to have Jason Caldwell of Inside the Auburn Tigers. He and Mark Murphy absolutely work harder than a dozen Mennonite farmers and a dozen rented mules to put out information when it comes to covering the Auburn Tigers. And Jason, Auburn, we were talking about it off the air in the break just now, but Brian Harsin, you were introduced to him at his press conference Christmas Eve. Well, the week before was the early signing date, and that's when the lion's share of the recruits, most of the top guys in the country, had already signed. Your thoughts on the way Auburn closed and put a class together? They signed some guys in December. What they did on Wednesday, what happened today, and what's still out there because it's not over.
Yeah, I think the first thing, yeah, you're right. You look at it, and 90 some odd % of the 4- and 5-star guys signed in December.
Yeah.
So people are kind of expecting Auburn to go out and sign some 4- and 5-star guys, on Wednesday when there weren't, there are none of those guys available. So there was a couple, maybe a handful, but you're already up against the 8 ball and trying to recruit anyway on a short leash when you don't have any time. They really had to focus on about 10 guys. So they focused on about 10 guys, ended up getting, 7 so far, and, after you get Jarquez Hunter today, running back from Philadelphia, Mississippi. Yeah, kind of a home run hitter type running back, and then the other day Juwan Gaston, some of that class, Colby Smith, big offensive tackle. I thought they did some good things considering the short time frame, trying to hire staff, do all the things that were involved. So you kind of got those pieces in place, and then still waiting to see what Tennessee does in terms of dealing with guys like Dylan Brooks and Cody Brown, a couple of guys that could, who knows, potentially be part of Auburn's class as well. But, just have to see. Tennessee basically has 30 days to try to make those guys wait it out, to go, hey, we're going to make you wait it out. We're going to keep calling and doing those things. And so at the moment, Tennessee's not budging on releasing those guys. We'll see what happens here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that will be fun to watch. Hey, Jake Crane's on here with us over in Atlanta, hosts of the J-Boy podcast. And Jake, Jason and I have been talking about this Auburn recruiting class, and I know you've got some questions. And before I go to you, I want to ask one more. Jason, again, Dylan Brooks, if they don't release him, he's got to sit out. Now, the old rule was if you transferred, you were on a team in the SEC to another SEC school, unless the coach gave approval in that school, you had to sit out 2 years. But it's usually they give the approval, but it is a 1-year deal. So if Dylan Brooks cannot be released from his national letter of intent from Tennessee, what is the immediate thing that what happens to him?
Yeah, a firestorm is the immediate thing that happens. It's already happened in this state with Tennessee and what they did to Rock Taylor from Oxford High School. We already seen that. Keith Etheridge basically coming out and said, look, they're not welcome at our school, any school I'm coaching at any longer.
Yeah.
So they've already encountered part of a firestorm. If you refuse to allow these guys out of their letters of intent and kind of stand firm with everything going on, you're going to encounter more of a firestorm. And at this point, it's not worth it, in my opinion. It's not worth it for Tennessee to fight this battle. Now, they may choose to do so, but if they do, then, if you're Dylan Brooks or whoever, you just have to go in the transfer portal, having never stepped foot on campus, and then transfer and just sit out and do those things. So, I think that would be the plan of attack for those guys. And my guess is if you see that happen, you might see more than these two, because it's going to be something that, hey, nobody talks more than these recruits talk to each other right now. Through social media, all these things. Tennessee would do themselves a world of damage, in my opinion, if they try to stand firm on this one.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because looking at recruiting, it's so much about perception. I mean, Jeremy Pruitt had a lot of relationships. Half his coaching staff had pretty deep roots in the state of Alabama. Back in the spring, early summer, they had 6 of the top 30 kids in Alabama committed. I think 4 of the top 12 or 14 players in the state. They ended up getting
one.
Yeah.
Well, as long as, if Dylan Brooks gets out of this, they would end up with one. It'd be tight end from Albertville, who I think is going to be an offensive tackle, who would be coming off a knee injury. That would be the only one of those guys that wound up going to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's amazing. And again, you look really good in late April, but what really happens on signing day, usually 2 different things. Jake Crane, I got to ask you this question. Overall, just the whole recruiting right now, the signing period, and I'm going to ask you this question and then throw it back to Jason Caldwell. Making a change with your head coach. December 13th, Auburn made it official that Gus Malzahn was out. It was Christmas Eve before Brian Harsin was introduced to the Auburn media. That's a lot different than, maybe a month earlier making a decision on getting rid of a coach. What do you see schools doing going forward? Maybe making a change mid-season, then you've got an interim coach, and then you run the risk of, if he's doing really well, you've got to keep him.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's ever really a good time to fire a coach. I mean, you got to do it, but when you do it, and especially if you bring somebody from kind of the outside, you really are starting from scratch. Number one, it's great to be on, Rob. Jason, it's good to talk to you guys. But no, just looking at it from a reality perspective, a realistic perspective, and not only the timing of when he got hired, but this signing period really isn't the main signing period. It's kind of, I call it the last call. The early signing period is the big one now, the one that a lot of people look for. If you're Brian Harsin coming from another place with that amount of time, anybody that thought he was going to go out and sign a bunch of 5 stars late, you really don't know how recruiting works. But what I'm interested to see is how Auburn plays this portal, because as hard as it is, if you're Ryan Harsin or Shane Beamer or Josh Heupel, whatever, even though, as you were talking about, Josh Heupel's not doing himself any favors, that portal can kind of save you this year, and that extra year of eligibility can kind of save you. So I think it's just he got what he could. We've talked about some of the prospects they've signed before. There's still some guys out there. They get Jarquez Hunter today, who I think is underrated. You turn on his tape, he's a kid that down the road I think will be able to help. But, expecting Auburn to finish top 15 when in the class when Brian Harsin got in was very unrealistic. And I think he did about as well as he could with what was out there. And you've already seen how hard they've been on the trail for 2022, especially on the offensive line side. And I think that'll only increase.
Yeah. And Jason, you followed for 21 years now, Auburn, inside the Auburn Tigers, working with Mark Murphy. Numerically, ranking wise, 24/7 Sports composite, this Auburn class, I guess, would be the lowest ranked of all those. But it's also different. It's the first time Auburn's ever made a coaching change with an early December signing period. You're also in the same state with Alabama, of course, Georgia to the east, all around you. There's no place where you can go run and hide. I mean, we know that. This is life in the SEC, life being the Auburn coach. Your general, what are your general impressions of Brian Harsin and the staff he's put together? And how do you think they're going to do long-term in recruiting? Because I got a lot of faith in them, but you're there on the ground.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a good recruiting staff. I really do. And, here's the thing about this class. We talked about it, change or no change. Gus Malzahn and that staff they'd had 2 or 3 years to recruit this class as well, and it hadn't worked.
True.
Because you look at it, and the one thing that Auburn counts on, the one thing that plays a big part in Auburn recruiting was taking visits, guys coming to campus. We know how important it is to get people on the Auburn campus. You factor that in as well. I mean, it'd been different, maybe different a little bit if Ryan Harsin would have had a chance to bring guys in January and sit down with them and talk to them and get to know them and show them Auburn and all those things. But when you factor that in along with the coaching change, and you're right, this is the first time, and I think, people around the country, have already seen it, and others will figure it out sooner or later. When you make a coaching change nowadays with an early signing period thrown in the mix, it changes everything dramatically. And thought that was a big deal for Auburn. But to me, the biggest deal is, and we'll see how much it impacts 2022, because these kids are going to go now, almost a full year now without taking visits. And so for a new staff, going out and meeting high school coaches, going to see kids in spring practice, all that stuff, probably not going to happen. So it's imperative for me, for Auburn, for this 2022 class, it's imperative to get guys on campus. And if they can do that in June and July, if that starts to open up some things, then I think you got a chance to really make some noise in 2022. If you don't, I think it's going to be another issue for Auburn. I think Auburn, maybe more than anybody else, getting guys on campus is important and building bonds and doing those things in recruiting. If you don't have that, it could play an impact.
All right. I'll talk a little about another thing. Mike Bobo is the quarterback coach, and he's got a really good history. And Jake and I were talking about this earlier today of developing quarterbacks. Bo Nix, to me, looked like he regressed last year with Chad Morris. I don't know if they got along well or what, but he did not look like he was having a whole lot of fun as the quarterback. Brian Harsin was a quarterback in college. We've got a lot of alpha males on this staff at Auburn. Bo Nix certainly is. I mean, he is a very fiery competitor, and you've got to have that to win in the SEC. But it seemed like he was always running on his back feet, running for his life. The offensive line has got to improve. Auburn signed 2 offensive linemen. They needed probably half a dozen. Is the transfer portal? We don't know what's going to happen. Spring practice will open up even more opportunities. And I'm very wary of the portal because if a guy's mad about something at one place, he'll find something not to like about you. But what's Auburn going to do? Because if they can't get help on the line of scrimmage, on the offensive line especially, nothing will change.
Well, what you have too is you also have a guy like, for example, a guy in Brendan Coffey that I thought really improved the more we saw him last year. I thought he should have gotten the start in a bowl game over Alec Jackson, and I thought that was a mistake. I thought Alec Jackson wasn't ready to play again with that cast on his hand. But I thought Alec improved throughout the year last year. I still think he's probably better off as a guard than a tackle. But you got Brendan Coffey, you got Killian Zaire, you got 2 junior college guys who've had now a year on campus. Now you'll have a guy that, a chance to see what those guys can do in the spring. You're right, portal. If you can get a guy that's experienced, maybe as an offensive tackle, absolutely, you're going to take that guy. They've got some bodies now. You get back, Broderius Ham. You get back, Brandon Council, who will, should be good to go after that knee injury during the middle of the year last year. He should be ready by the time they get to the season. You got some pieces, but you're talking about Bo Nix. You answered your own question afterwards when you talked about lack of offensive line, lack of running game.
Yeah.
When you can't run the ball in Augusta Miles on offense, you can't throw the ball. You can go back and look. I don't care who it is, Cam Newton, Nick Marshall. You can find any of them. If you couldn't run it, you couldn't throw it. And it was a cause and effect last year that, without Tank Bigsby and once you had a couple of injuries on that offensive line, then that offense was up against a wall and there wasn't any answers.
Yeah. And, one more question. And I know you're busy and we got to go. We've gone. Love having you on here, but I got to ask you this. When you look at the number of players, DJ Williams, running back out of Sebring, Florida, he's gone. Mark Anthony Richards, gone. Harold Joyner had already left back in the fall. He's at Michigan State. And look, whenever you have a coaching change, guys are going to leave. They're going to get their feelings hurt, whatever. But for God's sakes, you got to have some guys that are tough. Where's the testosterone? I mean, we putting estrogen in the water. This is crazy. I've never seen so many guys that get their feelings hurt and they leave. How are you going to build a team, Jason? And just comment on this and I'll let you go. But how are you going to build a team and a culture with a bunch of guys that you got to constantly worry about entering the portal or just, we cannot continue. There's no leadership from the NCAA. We don't know about the immediate transfer deal. That's been put on hold. But we've got to have some structure and we've got to have, a dominant alpha male leader at Auburn for sure. And every school's got to have it. But these kids have got to know, look, you're not being taken advantage of. That narrative doesn't fly with me. Okay. When you look at the opportunities they get at college, and let's focus here on Auburn, you're set for life if you'll just do your part. Work harder than everybody else.
Well, it's not going to get any better because it's not going to go backwards. It's only going to keep opening up because and it's coming. There's going to come a time when they say, look, you transfer wherever you want to without penalty. They pushed it, they tabled it for a year, but it's going to happen. But you look at what's happened in basketball, and it's going to happen in football too. You see less and less. And Alabama is a perfect example. A team that you get a couple of those key guys. They go, all right, I'm going to jump to somewhere where there's some talent and let's all team together and you get some experience on the court. All of a sudden, you become one of the best teams in the country. And meanwhile, you look at Duke and North Carolina and Kansas and Kentucky and those teams. You can have as much talent as you want to, but you're right. Seniority, leadership, some guys that, hey, you got to have a bunch of glue guys that are willing to do their part. And sometimes it's tough to find that because the glue guys are the guys that sometimes they go, I want to be a glue guy. I want to be a star. Well, not everybody can be that guy. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in now where everybody they want to be the first round draft choice 3 years out of college. It just doesn't happen that way. That's why teamwork, building, and hey, let's face it, winning is the most important thing. Guys want to win.
Yeah.
Alabama, Clemson, those guys, they don't have a ton of those guys leave. You know why? Because at the end of the year, they know, hey, we got a chance to get a ring. There's nothing more important than winning at the end of the year, and that's where building that thing starts.
It is. Hey, great points. Jason Caldwell, Inside the Auburn Tigers. Tell people how they can follow you on social media and read your daily columns and great information that you always put out. And, man, this is some of the best stuff you've had in a while.
Yeah, check us out at autigers.com and also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
Jason Caldwell, Inside the Auburn Tigers. Look forward to having you on again soon. Have a good walk out there. Have a great weekend. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
You bet, man. Hey, Jake Crane on here with Rob Brown here, Sidelines. Another hour to go on Sidelines.live Friday afternoon podcast. And, hey, Jake, we're going to be joined in just a minute by Jimmy Ott from ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge. Always a lot of fun. One thing about the LSU people, and we always like to joke, Jimmy Hodge and you and I and all of us, no filter. I mean, brutal honesty. Hey, does this dress make me look fat, honey? You betcha. You look really huge. No, seriously. But I like what Jason was saying. Now, it ain't going to get any better. It's not going to go backwards. I hope that can change. I just think it's right. You've got to have a culture where the kids say, look, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stick it out here. And that means having great coaches and a great culture, a great process. Look, I look around me and one of my friends I've worked with for 12 years, been in the securities business for 30 years. Okay. He can tell you right now, the first month, the first year or two that he was in this business, he didn't have the success that he has now. It's about relationships. And like just about every friend I have in this business, they've got a long history of playing sports. Okay. I teach you the lessons of life. And I'm going to tell you something. If you think you can just go from firm to firm to firm or whatever you do in business and it's going to be better, remember the grass on the other side of the fence is still growing because the sun's shining on it. It's getting water. It's going to have to be mowed. Okay. It's just going to be a different address, different zip code or whatever. But you cannot. The only easy day was yesterday, Jake. And look, give us a little pep talk here right now. You got the blood of this is like that series that Audrey's got me hooked on Netflix, The Last Kingdom, about Uhtred, son of Ragnarsson, born a Saxon, raised a Dane. Well, you were born a Dane and raised a Dane. We talk about this alpha male culture a lot, but it's true. What would you be saying to a kid right now who after 1 year, not even going through spring practice as a freshman, is already talking about going into the transfer portal? Sit him down, talk to him, because mommy and daddy obviously, coddled the little boy, little Johnny, way too much and told him, you the man, since he was in second or third grade, and never prepared him to fight. Coach Crane, have at it. The mic is yours.
Rob, if it's me, it all goes back to the type of kid you're recruiting. Everybody talks about, this kid's this fast, this kid's this tall, he's this big. All that stuff's great, but a lot of it, you hear coaches like Harsin and Nick Saban and all them talk about culture and signing the right kids, not just the kid that everybody else wants to sign. And I think you kind of do save yourself those conversations most of the time, but there's always a couple guys. And really what I tell them is this, Number one, if you're not willing to compete or willing to work for a job, this isn't the right place for you. I can help you pack your stuff. If you want to quit, your mom and dad will still love you. That's great. But just understand that if you stick it out, at the end of the day, you're going to find out, number one, what you're really made of. Number two, if you're good enough, and if you're a man of your word. And at the end of the day, if that's something that doesn't interest you and something that you're not willing to do, and this place, I thought Gene Chizik used to say it, pretty well all the time, is this place was made great before you got here, not just because of you. So when I look at that and I sit down and look at a kid, because sometimes, 17, 18-year-old kids, they can get frustrated. They say the wrong thing. They got the wrong person in their ear. All they heard about when they were a senior in high school was how great they were, and they got all these SEC offers. Well, now that you're no longer a big fish in a small pond and you're a small fish in a big pond, we're going to find out what you're really made of. And some kids will turn that down. Some kids will take that on. But it's amazing, the kids that end up turning it down are probably the same kids that are going to turn down the running back in the B gap on 4th and 1. I'll take the guy that's been there, that's put in the work, that can look around at his teammates and understand the trust and what they've all sacrificed together. And he's willing to give up his body and not care about the health of other people out there on the other team just so you can win the game. So if that's something, that doesn't interest you, they make other schools and you can go have fun. But like Will Muschamp used to say when he was at LSU, you're either a tiger or you're tiger bait. The choice is yours.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you tell people too is, look, if you're going to quit out here because you think this is too tough, you're going to quit everything tough the rest of your life. And you've got to decide when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, what you are, because that's going to be, that's the story.
And I'll say this,
yeah.
Rob, I'll say that some kids though, and I've dealt with this, they haven't had that guy like me and you had their whole life that was telling them, you got to do it this way. This is the right way to do it. And what you'll find is a lot of times it comes down to the high school coach and the program that they came from and how he handled the guys that may not have had a father or a mother or an aunt or an uncle or grandmother in the home that were able to help them and help guide them.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And Jake, that's the truth. I mean, if you
many guys that come from a place that nobody knows,
Yeah.
that didn't have a great background, that took an opportunity wherever it is, stuck it out, did it the right way, and changed their life. I wish, people would talk about those stories as much as they do the others, because there's so many success stories about kids coming from bad backgrounds with no leadership, with nobody to look up to, and either a coach or a team member or a team member's family filling that void and changing their life and the lives of the family they provide for later. So I agree with you. There's too much of it out there, but I think one way to combat it is by shining a light on all the positive stories about the guys that have stuck it out and showing guys that, hey, listen, if you stick it out like a Mac Jones or anybody like that, you're going to give yourself a chance. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. So I think there's two sides to it, but you're exactly right in your analysis.
Yeah. And the bottom line with everything in life is hard work works. Okay.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
you'll get if you don't try and you don't make any effort, you'll get fired. You'll get a pink slip, whatever you want to call it. And you can go whine and go from job to job, but ultimately you've got to grab hold of something and believe in it. I mean, it's been preached to me my whole life by my mom and dad. Anything worth having in life is worth fighting for. I had a pledge trainer, Philip Allen Thompson, Huntsville, Alabama, watercress capital of the world. He had a dog named Mr. Happy. Phil Thompson used to get us up at 5:30 in the morning. We would do some voluntary exercise and PT running around the drill field there at Auburn. We would sing cadences that were wonderful. The decorum prohibits me singing them on live radio because of FCC rules. But I'll just say this. He would always tell us 5:30. Well, we'd be there at 5 o'clock or 5:05 because anybody misses, the whole group had to do more. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Those lessons that you learn in athletics will carry you wherever you want to go in life. My friend Vince Thompson, founder and the CEO of Melt Atlanta. I love the quote that he attributes from Mr. Woodruff, part of the Coca-Cola people in Atlanta. He said, Vince, you'll have all the success you want to have in life. If you work hard, you'll get it, as long as you don't mind who gets the credit. Okay. And the stories about the kids that are recruited As Coach Dye used to say, people say, he lives at the end of the dirt road. Coach Dye would say, well, hell, I've been to the end of the dirt road and took a left and went 3 miles.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where a lot of these kids come from. You're right.
Well, Rob,
yeah.
I'll tell you one right now. I signed a kid out of the 9th Ward in New Orleans, my 3rd year in coaching. Went on an in-home visit. He had just played his senior year, only had senior tape. That's why we had a chance at him. Went to his house for a visit. His mom wasn't there. There wasn't a dad. He had 3 younger kids. The mom was always working. I walked in. He had dirt floors. He had tried to prepare something to eat. A kid that had worked 3 jobs. So he couldn't play football for his first 3 years of high school because he worked 3 jobs. I'll say his name, Ramel Jones. I'll say it. Went down in there, signed him, came from nothing, barely made it out. He's now the vice president of a construction company on the east side of New Orleans, lives in a 3-story house with 3 kids, has one that just won president council in 5th grade, and I talk to him probably every month. And every time I talk to him, I almost get emotional because I remember looking at a guy that had to meet me at the end of the street so he could walk me in and everybody else know that I was cool to be there because where he lived wasn't a very great area. And now he is having so much success. You talk about guys, stories like that, to me, need more press because there's guys out there that have done it the right way that came from nothing, absolutely nothing, and could have went many a different ways. Could have went to selling drugs, could have went to doing other stuff to put him in trouble. But he decided for his 3 siblings that he was going to go to South Alabama, ended up being all conference, graduated with a 3.2. And like I said, he's the vice president of a construction company. And I'll go to my grave. I don't care if I coach another game or win another game. Stuff like that to me is what really matters at the end.
Yeah, I mean,
Do that. South didn't do that. The kid did that.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Jake. Jimmy Ott is on here with us now from ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge. I'll just add one more thing. This past year, getting a chance since October 1st to work with the kids at Pure Youth in Memphis. These are city school kids, guys, that were not able to play high school football this year. And Melvin Cole's been out there working with these guys. He's been training them for 9 years, some of them. First year, he had this team with 32 guys on there. And these kids, he teaches them citizenship. They look you in the eye, yes or no, sir. They shake your hand. They're responsible. They work hard. The bottom line is that these guys are the example of hard work, pulling together. And if they, you can overcome any obstacle in life if you're willing to work. And that's the bottom line. And you talked about recruiting a kid out of the 9th Ward in New Orleans. And I know Jimmy Ott being down there from New Orleans and growing up LSU and all that can tell you stories. And they're what need to be focused on. Jimmy Ott, we're talking about some of the stories of guys that come from horrible backgrounds that are recruited and they end up at LSU or Georgia or Auburn or wherever. They overcome so much. You don't hear that much about them. They go on and have great success in life. All they want to focus on, a lot of the media, are the negative stories, but most of these guys are just they're great stories, and most of them are probably worthy of a book or 2. But Jimmy Ott, welcome to Sidelines.
Well, yeah. Look, you have no idea how much touching on something that I grew up with. My dad was he was a Chinese bandit on the '58 national championship team at LSU, and he wanted to. He continued in education, and he taught and coached in New Orleans. And, it kind of, as New Orleans started to transform a little bit with integration and things like that, the second half of his career, he taught and coached pretty much all inner city kids. And at one point, he had 48 kids on college football scholarships.
Wow.
He coached football and basketball. And, a lot of these, he was the father figure. There's no doubt. And my dad just got watches and rings and whatever. The kids would go on to college as a coach. You instilled, you made a difference in my life. I want you to have this. I mean, from BYU to UCLA to LSU to Georgia and Florida. I mean, all over. And it's funny because there was a pipeline in New Orleans up to Georgetown basketball, and coached basketball too. And he had 3 kids that went and played for John Thompson as well. And as you know, that John Thompson recently passed. But one of Thompson's sales pitch was that that is a predominantly white Jesuit school
Yep.
in DC.
Yeah.
Okay, it's exclusive. It's one of the best law schools as well. But here they are, these inner city kids from Orleans, Paris, New Orleans, and he promised that your kid is going to get an education. He's going to get a degree. Going to get a degree. So Dwayne Bryant went up there. Joey Brown, Othello Edwards, Terry McDonald, Jaron Jackson, all from not the most prestigious academic high schools in the city of New Orleans, came back with degrees. So, and that's where Thompson was controversial. And sometimes I kind of liked what he did, and sometimes I did not like what he did. But the thing was, he took care of his own. And that's all you can, and that's all you can ask as a parent, or a coach who wants the best for their kid or their player, is that they're going to improve their quality of living. And it's Saban talks about it a lot too at Alabama, but just, take athletics as an opportunity to get you somewhere where you won't be. And trust me, if I had, and my dad put a lot of guys through college, okay, there's another chunk that never got that chance because they didn't behave themselves in school.
Yep.
Okay. So even at the high school level, he dangled that playing time carrot or that eligibility carrot. Is like, if they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So just, and he always said, there's a whole lot of people a lot more richer than me, but man, I feel like I'm the richest person because I have helped kids. I've helped people so much. And, it's just now he had some different tactics that may not be supposed to prove these days. Let's just say that, but and
I guarantee those kids glad he did it.
Yeah.
I guarantee those kids are glad he did it. And I'll tell you a crazy one real quick. I know, Rob, Malcolm Butler, who caught the interception to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Coming out before he went to junior college, he got in some trouble. And when I worked at Jones County Junior College, our DC was the one who went and got him out of the kitchen at Popeyes, got him to walk on to Hines Community College. Fast forward 7 years later, the guy's making the interception to seal the Super Bowl. And it's just amazing how, and you talk about your dad and you say, yeah, well, he helped out this one guy. Well, that one guy, you changed his life. He has 2 kids. Now his kids are growing up with a situation that's 10,000 times better than what he grew up in, and they really have a chance. So really, you say 48 guys, there's probably over 300 people that just those decisions have touched, because the best calls that I get are not the calls about, when kids wanted to commit and do all that stuff. That's great. But it's the calls 2 or 3 years down the road from a guy that graduated saying, Coach, I'm getting married. I'm really excited. I got a great job. And you were one of the first guys I wanted to call because you did so much for me. And it just, that human to human element. And it's really a people business, as crazy as it is. Those are the things that as you get older, at least in my case, you really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no question. And one of his favorite kids he ever coached was Patrick Surtain Sr.
Oh, wow.
Now, his son is at Alabama, even at the junior high level, he was so smart. He actually had a Cornell offer. All right. And, his dad was, juniors, they just finished at Alabama, but man, they were running checks and audibles at the line in 9th grade. But no, it's just that, when my mom passed, they're coming to the funeral, to see these kids, it's appreciated in the love and, direction. And the best thing, and this is where our generation of parents, because my kid's a freshman in high school, and we have a simple rule. I don't want to hear your side of the story, son. I'm taking your teacher and your coach's side. And so it's your role. It's your job to make an impression on them to give me a good report. 'Cause I don't want to hear your side of the story. So we're going to do like that. But he, it's just the parental support. So when the players that my dad coached had kids that went through, it was over. Then it was a machine, and they were just, he had all the support, and they were just, and he could drive the kids, and they was getting the best. There's so many things besides rings and tournament baseball or whatever, travel baseball and trophies. It's about, just instilling lifelong lessons. Hey, man, in business or whatever, in life, crap ain't gonna go your way all the time.
That's right.
Guess what? A a call went against us. Hey, fight through it. You know.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well,
you know that.
You
Well,
got
Jimmy, I was going to say, me and you got a lot in common. My dad used to say, and I used to say to my players, we don't make you run and get up at 6 a.m. and lift and have to do all this stuff just because we want to win. It's when you're married and you got 3 kids and a mortgage and a car payment and you got to pay the electric bill and that alarm clock rings at 6 a.m. You get up and go to work because that's what you were taught to do. And that's what was put into you by your parents and us. And it's your responsibility to do that. I think that goes a long way. And I think a lot of that is missing from today's society.
Well, don't. Yeah, you're not trying to be their best friend. I mean, I can tell you that. I mean, and that's where we get into trouble. I mean, and Jimmy, your dad, he coached in New Orleans, and which school did he coach at? The same school the whole time?
No, he coached it, but he settled in. He coached at a few different schools, but he settled in at Edna Carr, which is a powerhouse in football and basketball.
Well,
it's just, it had so many good players. Robert Royal, here's a little story. Robert Royal came in St. Aug, and his uncle, Donald Royal, played college ball for Notre Dame and the Orlando Magic. So he's a basketball kid, and St. Aug is the most prestigious. It's the only predominantly black school in the Catholic League in New Orleans, and they have the best history of a basketball program. But he transferred to Carr, and so he comes over to Carr. My dad sees him. He puts football back. Someone says, "No, Robert, here's the deal. You're coming out for football, or I'm failing you in PE." "Oh no, coach, I'm a basketball player. Well, 10 years later in the NFL as a tight end, he comes back and speaks to my dad, similar to what Saban did to Marcus Spears. That's fine, Marcus. You want to be a tight end, but you do know what the defensive linemen make more than the tight ends and that. And so and you see those kids come back and then they treat me with so much respect because of what my dad did to them. And so when I'm growing up in Baton Rouge, so I have my kid, he goes to a very nice school, but it doesn't have a ton of diversity. We live in a neighborhood it's very nice. It's a golf community where the LSU golf teams is their home game. Not a whole lot of diversity. So what I do? Well, my buddy coaches the most prestigious inner city football team in the city, the South Baton Rouge Rams, where tons of NFL players have gone through. So he's going over there. He's the only white kid in the league. All good, but he's going to learn diversity instead of just hearing about racial equality. He's going to live it, and there's no better way than through athletics.
Well,
everybody's
right.
Between the lines.
Exactly right.
And when the more you interact with kids from different backgrounds, the more you're going to respect them. And that's so we don't just talk about it. We live it at the house. I'm going to get Pollyanna on you, but I mean, it's just I had to give something to my kid that my dad gave to me.
Well, Jimmy, you're right on about it. And I go back to I remember talking to former Auburn coach Gene Chizik a year and a half ago out at Louis Chicken Fingers, his restaurant in Auburn. And I was sitting there with Greg Williams, my friend, who's the equestrian coach at Auburn. That's won like 6 national championships. And I wanted to meet Coach Chizik. And I said, what was that conversation like when you got Carlos Dansby to move from defensive back to linebacker? He said, well, I said, Carlos, I've been around a while. I've coached some really good players. I think you can be an all-SEC defensive back. But I think if you move to linebacker, that's your money position. You could have a 10-year-plus career in the NFL. And I think a day or two later, Carlos Dansby, who played at Woodlawn High School, very prestigious old school there in Birmingham, like Melrose High School in Memphis, came. He said, all right, I'm going to give the linebacker a shot. And I believe Carlos might still be playing 17 years in the NFL. But think about that conversation and Coach Chizik mentoring him, pushing him. And what I also remember is when Carlos was in the Super Bowl, everybody comes on and says, whatever your name and where you went to school. Carlos Dansby said Woodlawn High School. And I remember some people in the media went after him and he said, look, I love Auburn. I absolutely love that place, but I came from Woodlawn and I want my story to be a story that can inspire other kids from that neighborhood, that they can accomplish anything if they can conceive it and they can believe it, they can achieve it. So right on with what y'all are saying. And you're damn right this stuff matters, because that's why you coach. and you talk to every player out there, Jimmy, Jake, y'all know this. When you get these guys together, 20, 30, 50, 60 years after they played together, they are closer than a lot of people are with their own family members. My brother-in-law, let me say something. Kurt Ham, 26 years in the Marine Corps. What do you think he's going to do if he gets together with a bunch of guys that he fought with in Fallujah and Somalia and all those other lovely places? I mean, he's tight with those guys. Hard work works. It's why guys that come from the worst backgrounds imaginable can go to Paris Island and 13 weeks later earn the title of United States Marine. I mean, hard work works. And if you don't learn to overcome adversity young in life, you're not going to make it. So that's how that stuff works. But Jake and Jimmy, let's go back to Jimmy. Let's talk right now a little about this LSU basketball team. Will Wade.
Do we have to?
Well, yeah. Yeah, they're not playing Alabama again this season, except maybe in the SEC tournament. But what's going on with them, and what's the takeaway from last weekend, the late collapse against Texas Tech? Not that Texas Tech isn't a good program, but LSU got beat again by 18, 20 points by Alabama Wednesday night. What's the takeaway, and where do you see LSU going the rest of the year?
My son and I went to the PMAC on Saturday and watched the Texas Tech game, and LSU's intensity and their toughness has sort of come and go this year. But that game, they really played hard, and there's 357 Division I teams, and Texas Tech is probably first, second, or third as far as the reputation for just playing hard. They just pound the offensive glass. They get into you defensively. It's just Chris Beard's very frank with it. He says, this program is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And they do the dirty things. LSU matched it. They matched it. And when they lost that game in the fashion that they did, you could not have written a worse scenario. And there were some things that they did bad on the bench. When we know they're going to foul, I tell my son, I said, we got 3 guys in the court that can shoot free throws, 2 they can't. Got to keep in their hands. What do? Texas Tech gets it out of our Cam Thomas's hands, and another kid that's not as strong, boom, he missed the front end of a 1-and-1. They lose McClung on a loose ball. They throw the inbounds pass when he could still run after a made basket and run the baseline. But they don't, to try and create better angles. Just some things. And Will's not the strongest on the bench. Okay, he could use a strong bench coach, but they still it could not be any worse scenario. Like, it's almost like it's over. I hate to say that because they're a fragile psyche, and they had no chance going into Alabama. They're not a great rebounding team, and they lost their best rebounder, the leading rebounder in Darius Days, for a couple of weeks. And all of a sudden, which was a promising season, I mean, they're our top 20 NET. I think they're a Sweet 16 type of team. They're clicking, they're sharing the ball, and it's just hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
But if they lose to Texas Tech by 10, okay. But it's the way they lost makes it so much worse. And then you lose Days. And this is not a deep roster. And it's just, before the Texas Tech game, I said these 8 games, all of them, they could lose, okay, and they can win every one of them, but they're probably going to be out of the tournament. They're 0-2 at the start of this stretch. They're probably going to go 2-6, roughly. I don't know which ones they're going to win or lose, but it's a kind of a promising season that's just not going to happen, and a lot of heat on Will Wade. And I try and remind people, do y'all really want to go back where we didn't make the tournament 20 out of 25 years and we're about to make, go 3 out of 4 years for Will Wade? No, this is his worst year as getting the most out of his roster. But, I mean, as far as these massive changes and stuff, man, you people need to realize who we are. It's hard to win basketball games at LSU when you got a lot of fan interest in football and a lot of fan interest in baseball. Way more than most in baseball. So both of those sports overlap yours. It's tough to win basketball here, but this is it has taken a very disappointing turn.
Yeah, and that hopefully it'll turn around for LSU's sake. Jake Crane, you watched
Hey,
that.
good. Don't count on it, Rob.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be realistic, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
But you're right. That SEC Big 12 challenge was good. I mean, SEC ended up winning, the numbers on that, but it is hard. I mean, it's hard to win at Auburn. It's hard to win at Ole Miss, Mississippi State,
yeah,
where football
absolutely.
and baseball, all these schools. I mean, Kentucky, it's a natural, and they're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels at Kentucky, and they've screwed that up this year. I mean, I don't know. Jimmy Hodges.
I'll tell you this, though, guys. I'll tell you this. I think Nate Oates, I think he can do both, though. I think he can compile a roster, and I think he can coach, too.
Yeah.
They're very good defensively.
Yeah.
Very, very smart defensively. They understand angles. They switch. He might be a real fun. Alabama's might have the money. We know they have the money, but it's going to be soon where he gets a bigger offer. I think he's got it. I really do. I think he's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I really do. And Jake Crane, you have to agree. I mean, he came down from Buffalo and he coached outside of Detroit and had a really good reputation. But people wondered if that would translate to big time college. But he's taken a talented roster at Alabama that wasn't winning, and now they are winning.
Yeah. I mean, and you say, I think, Nate is an unreal coach. I think the way he gets the guys, the toughness level at Alabama has increased a lot since he's been there. And I think he, going in.
Yeah.
Was last year, you had John Petty returning. You had some older guards, which makes the transition a little bit easier. Herb Jones was another guy. But you look at the guys that he's brought in. Josh Primo is the guy that gets better every game. But, I think, like Jimmy said, some guys just got a knack for getting guys to listen and play hard. And I think Nate Oates has crossed that bridge. If you can get John Petty to play hard on defense, you can probably get everybody to play hard. But, Rob, I'm going through a bad stretch right here on the road, brother. I'm probably going to lose you here in a minute.
All right, Jake, why don't we do this? All right, Jake, let's do this. Call back in at about 4:45, and we're going to do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Jake, call us back in about 4:45, 10 till.
Rob, I got to roll too, bro.
Yeah.
I got to do a lot of shows.
I know.
I want these prop bets.
Exactly. Jimmy, tell people how they can follow you. Great stuff as always today. And we're going to have Jim Tunney, former head of NFL officials, here right after you.
Oh, man, Jim Tunney, man, that is. I grew up with Jim Tunney.
Say hello to him. He's on the line with us right now.
That is awesome. That is awesome, man. I mean, there's no more NFL. There's not an NFL official that I kind of associate with more than Jim Tunney. Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, watching the games in New Orleans.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He's on the line with us right now. So say hello to him. He just joined us.
I know one thing. I know one thing, Jim Tunney. You'd have called interference on that Rams Saints play at the end of the NFC Championship game. I know one thing, my man.
I did from my living room.
Hey, man, I'm sorry I can't hang on, but man, no, appreciate your work all through those years, to say the least, man. And it's a different game now with it's the speed's faster, and and one thing people don't appreciate till you go on field level and watch a game to see how fast things are going, you'll appreciate what these officials do a lot more. But man, hey, awesome to touch base with you. But I got to run. I got to do another interview. Rob, y'all take care.
You bet. Thanks so much. Jim Tunney, former head of NFL officials, over 32-year career, more than 500 games. You refereed men like George Hallis. That's a recognizable name. A man named Lombardi. Your best friend, Coach Don Shula, who passed away this past summer. You live out in Pebble Beach, California. Having you on is an honor. If you would do this, hold through the break. We're going to take a quick commercial break, Mr. Tunney, and we're going to be right back with you for the rest of the show. And I expect Jimmy Hodge to be joining in here in a moment. Jake Crane bounce back on with us as soon as he gets in a better zone. But we are honored to have you. It is Super Bowl weekend coming up here. The Kansas City Chiefs going to try and defend that title against the Tampa Bay Bucks, and Tom Brady going for number 7. And this is going to be fun. But we're going to be with you till 5 p.m. Central on the www.sidelines.live podcast. Hello to everybody listening. Todd Foray, Philip Thompson, my pledge trainer down there at the lake this weekend. All of you, we're only as strong as our weakest link, and a show's only as good as its guests. And having Jim Tunney on is like having Robert Plant give your child singing lessons, man. This stuff is awesome. We'll be right back after these quick commercial breaks. This is Sidelines.live. Okay, Mr. Tunney, I'll be right back with you, okay?
I'll be right here.
Okay, I'll be right back. Yeah, sorry.
Did Justin call back? Rob, did Justin call back?
He's supposed to call in just a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me text him back. Tom, watch out. Oh, the Hams beer sign. Okay, let me, whoops, just 1 second here, Mr. Tunney. All right, let me check with everything we're about. How much longer till we come back on, Audrey?
A minute.
Okay.
Not 20 seconds.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Just okay, here we go.
Maybe,
Okay.
maybe wait 15 minutes or something. Did I do it?
Okay. Let's see. All right.
And then I won't run any more commercials. Just do that with him.
With Justin?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 If not, 1 second here. Okay. All right. You right back?
Almost.
Okay.
To ensure that
Okay.
we can close
All
that
right.
inequitable.
And then-
All right, I'm turning on your mic.
Okay. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you on the Friday afternoon Sidelines.live podcast, broadcasting from the Cherry Farm in Parkin, Arkansas. And man, we've had a blast so far. Jake Crane, host of the J-Boy podcast over in Atlanta, has been on with us. Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers, Jimmy Ott from down in Baton Rouge, ESPN 104.5. And been having a lot of fun talking about what's going on, college football, basketball, recruiting and all. And now, man, I wish, Jimmy Ott could have stayed on. And of course, he has always loved to talk about Mr. Jim Tunney, who from 1960 till the early 90s, referred to as the Dean of NFL referees. And we've had you, Mr. Tunney, on the show, I guess about 4 or 5 times here in the last year, and always an honor to have you, and the history and knowledge of the game, but more than anything, the ethics, the core values. Your honor is dearer than your life. That motto, that's the kind of motto that you live by and you exemplify. More than 500 games you officiated, 3 Super Bowls, if I'm correct. I don't know if anyone else has ever done that, but hey, it's Super Bowl weekend. Kind of set the stage, I guess, what it's like for not just the players and the coaches and all, but for the NFL officials that are selected, because it's got to be the highest honor to officiate a Super Bowl. And take it from there, and we'll ask you a few questions.
Well, like officials love to get that Super Bowl, love to get a playoff game. And when you get the Super Bowl, you realize you've been graded out that year as the number one in your position. And that's what they graded by position. And this year, the 7 that work in the game have been graded on 1. By the way, in addition to 7, there'll be 7 more on the sidelines who are backups in case somebody gets hurt
Yeah.
in one position or the other. So we have 14 officials hanging around there. So there's not going to be people doing things wrong. In fact, in the Super Bowl, the players play better. It's not a tough game to work. There's a lot of pressure on it, but it's not a tough game to work. If you do your homework and you've done your training about what you need to call, when you need to call it, and where your position on the field is, it's going to move along pretty well. I'm looking forward to the game.
When you get out there, the excitement, and obviously the players and the coaches and the fans are not the only one with a huge adrenaline rush. What did you do? Did you set the tone right there at the beginning? Do you pull the captains aside and say, look, we're going to expect a good sportsmanship, a good clean game. Let's play right. And do you call it any differently than you did all the other games leading up to that point to the Super Bowl?
You don't have to tell them much. They know the pressure they're under, and
Okay.
they know that if they commit a foul, it'll hurt their team. So they avoid the foul better in the Super Bowl than they do during the season. And so it's not a tough game to work that way, but there's a lot of pressure on you because every call you make, like every pass that Brady or Mahomes throw, is a critical one, can be intercepted or in the ground or whatever. But as an official, you want to make the right call at the right time and have it count, have it influence the game. You want to stay away from calling fouls if you can. I'd like to work a game where you never had to throw a flag, but that doesn't happen very often.
That's right. Have you had a chance to meet Tom Brady in person yet? Oh, I know this is amazing. He leaves the Patriots, Bill Belichick, and now he goes to Tampa, and he's in the Super Bowl, and it's in his hometown, Raymond James Stadium for the Tampa Bay Bucks. But I'm just curious what it's like to be around Tom Brady and what his mind weekend.
Well, Tom is at the team now, and certainly the best in the business this year. I started in 1960 with Bart Starr and John Unitas, and so I go to Sonny Jurgensen and Roger Staubach and Fran Tarkington and you name it, John Elway. I've seen a lot of great quarterbacks with a lot of the values that they have, and Tom has a lot of those. I've watched Tom since high school and college here in California. Grew up not too far from where I live, and then of course he went to Michigan. You realize in Michigan he was a third-string quarterback. He's behind Brian Griese and Drew Henson. In fact, when he was drafted 199. They drafted 198 players before somebody picked Tom Brady. And so, he wasn't much coming out of college. He was great in high school and ended up being pretty good in college, but only 199. And then he just done sensational work with the Patriots and now with the Tampa Bay Bucks. He's a wonderful human being. I met him socially, not on the field, but because I was gone when he started. But he's a wonderful human being, had high values, and he was suspended by the commissioner for what they call the deflate gate and all that. But he's an honest man, does a good work, and a good team player.
When you get out there at that level, this is if the Bucks win and Tom Brady finishes the game as a starting quarterback, this will be his 7th Super Bowl championship. I believe with the Patriots as the quarterback, they played for the AFC Championship 13 or 14 times in his 20 years there. He leaves and the organization changed in a lot of ways. And one of my favorite players, Cam Newton, just wasn't able to get it done. Back up Jarrett Stidham. It's different. Bill Belichick's still the coach, but that combination of Belichick and Tom Brady is amazing. Who are some of the better coach quarterback combinations like that you had the chance to interact with as official in the NFL in your career?
I watched Bill Walsh, the magic time for the 49ers in the early 80s. I've also watched John Madden and Kenny Stabler do a great job in getting up to the Super Bowl that way. So there's some great combinations over the years, and I I do know a lot about all of them, but take those two, just Montana and Bill Walsh and Kenny Stabler and John Madden. They were great combinations, and they listened to each other, and they might have battled back and forth about things, but it was all in the good for winning the game. That's what they're all about.
When you look back over your career, the coaches, when you first started coaching in 1960, Vince Lombardi, George Hallis, Tom Landry, and I remember asking you one of the interviews in the past, what was Tom Landry like? He looked so calm over there, wearing the hat and the blazer. My mom, by the way, her favorite coach, never, still to this day, Mr. Tunney, has she gotten over Tom Landry not being the coach of the Cowboys. She also loved Dick Vermeil. Talk about what Dick Vermeil and Tom Landry were like on and off the field, because Tom Landry, you said, looked calm, as I've heard before, like a duck on the surface of the water looks calm, but you don't see their feet under the water. What was he like? And what was Dick Vermeil like?
There's certainly different people. Tom Landry was calm and cool like that, but he was very emotional. He was really emotional, and while I never heard him use a swear word. Never a swear word. He got upset and said, "Oh, guys, oh, gee, oh, upset." but he was never to the point of going after an official. He and I have had a couple of go around, but it was always on the basis of what's the best thing to do.
Yes.
And the difference between Tom Landry and Dick Vermeil is as wide as you can get. Dick can wear his emotion on his sleeve. I've known Dick as a personal friend and still personal friend, a longtime coach, and all the things he did at UCLA before he got to the Rams and all that, and won the Super Bowl with the Rams. Uh, he was very emotional player, and but he fired his team up. Dick Vermeil was a very good team player. Landry was also, but it was totally different style. And it's one of the things I like about this working in the NFL is that I worked for probably, I guess, nearly 300 different NFL coaches in my 31 years, and to work with different coaches and people maybe you've never heard of, people who are Jerry Glanville, who wasn't there very long. But then you get Tom Landry, who lasted 29 years, and Chuck Dole. And when I first started in the league, and as you mentioned, working for George Hallis, I thought it was like meeting Tom Edison. This guy invented the game. I mean, he was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he was hard on officials, really hard on officials. He was his game. I mean, you were coming to work his game.
Yeah.
He's the guy. He's the guy. It's his ball. And if you didn't do the right thing at the right time, and he knew when you were out of position. He knew when you made a call that you weren't sure of. And boy, he went after you when you did that. When you make a call, you got to be positive you were in the right position, you made the right call at the right time, and no guessing.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed meeting and knowing Coach Alex.
Yeah, and going back the history of the NFL and growing up, again, I always remember the Kansas City Chiefs, Hank Stram, watching Monday Night Football in 1970 or 71 for the first time ever with my dad, and we discovered it, and that was just I've never stopped watching it. But so many great memories of Super Bowls and just NFL players. You mentioned Bart Starr, Joe Montana, John Elway. And every time we think, well, we've seen the best ever, we find someone else. And then we got a guy like Tom Brady, 199th best ever. We find someone else. And then we got a guy like Tom Brady, 199th pick overall, third string quarterback at Michigan behind Drew Henson and Brian Greasy. Drew Bledsoe gets hurt on the Patriots. They put in Tom Brady, and he never looked back. So as we go in, and now Patrick Mahomes in his fourth year in the NFL, trying to get back-to-back wins for the Super Bowl. And you remember when the Super Bowl started and the Hunt family, what they mean to the NFL, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, that history. Talk about them and how important their vision was, and not just that vision, but making it a reality through hard work and networking with other like-minded people.
I had a chance to have to work for a game before the Super Bowl, championship games was Green Bay and Cleveland and Dallas and people like that, and some great memories of working with Coach Shula, who I thought was a really great coach and a man who developed a team and took that one team. I worked Super Bowl six in Miami, excuse me, in New Orleans when Dallas beat Miami. And then next year, Coach Shula took that Miami Dolphins team in 1973 and won 17 in a row.
Yep.
And I told him he had to give me credit because I worked the game that he lost. The last game they lost, I worked that,
Wow.
and that was Dallas and Miami. But he took it to the team and he said, "Gentlemen, tomorrow we start for a new year, a new season, and we're not going to lose any games." And he was a great motivator. I like coaches who are motivators. The Lombardis, the Shulas, the Maddens, the Walshes, the Knowles, and people like that. They were great. I got a chance to work with Paul Brown, and he coached the Cleveland Browns. And he was a genius as a football coach, and there are a lot of geniuses in this game, but he knew the game so well. He devised the plays that made that Cleveland Browns so successful in the old days. Has had a bad run for all time, but it's coming back now with this quarterback Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
And here's another guy, he's a young kid, just starting out, got a good career ahead of him, and he'll be in the Super Bowl one of these days.
It's going to be fun to watch. Let me say something real quick about one of our sponsors, and I want to continue this. We've got Jim Tunney, the Dean of NFL Referees from Pebble Beach, California. Over 500 games and 3 Super Bowls he officiated. Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas, and about a 45-minute drive from the bridge in Memphis. Easy to get to. Highway 64 going back and forth to Heber Springs, half-mile south of Highway 64 there in Wynn, Arkansas, right across the street from Jordan's Exxon, MJ's Exxon in Wynn, Arkansas. If you're on I-40 going to Little Rock or coming to Memphis from Little Rock, get off the Forest City exit, go 15 minutes north. Easy to get to. John Dobbs Jr., you all know the Dobbs name in the Memphis South area, part of the ownership group of Red River Auto Group. Hey, Justin Wynn, the general manager, they'll be there tonight till 6:30 or 7 or till the last sale is done. Last Friday night, 10:30, he got home because he delivered a car to someone who bought one. Jake Crane is on here with us now, host of the J-Boy podcast, can attest, getting a new Toyota 4Runner, the 21 model with the whiteout package last week. Easy to deal with. The whole team at Red River Ford Toyota, they are there to help you. Justin's driving that Toyota Tundra with the 35-inch tires, the unstuckable machine. It is great. I've never seen a pickup with so much back seat room. It's like being in your living room, and you could put, half a dozen people just in the back seat. But Red River Ford Toyota, they'll be open again tonight till 6:30 or 7. Again tomorrow morning, be back open at 8:30. Rusty Howard, the sales manager, Justin Wynn, the general manager, Stacy, Nate, the whole team, and Austin Futrell and the service team, they'll be there till 12 o'clock on Saturday. It's important to maintain your cars, trucks, SUVs. Red River Ford Toyota, these people are all about making the buying experience a winning experience. One more thing, if you've got a trade-in, Justin Wynn, general manager at Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas, said it best. Look, you've got the best opportunity in memory for trade-ins because of lack of inventory. So check them out. Red River Ford Toyota, the Toyota Tundra trucks, the Toyota 4Runners. These are fantastic vehicles. They're all there. Get on the website at redriverfordtoyota.com. It's on our sidelines.live website. Hey, look, we're going to be with you a little bit longer here. Rob Brown on the Friday afternoon edition, sidelines.live podcast. Special guest. What an honor it is to have Mr. Jim Tunney, the Dean of NFL Referees, calling in from Pebble Beach, California. Thanks again to our friend Don Hudson, one of my mentors who hooked us up last year. I know y'all have been speaking on the Speakers Roundtable Hall of Fame circuit for a long time, and just an honor to have you. Jake Crane is on here, host of the J-Boy podcast, and Jimmy Hodge as well. So let's go in here real quick. Jake, I know you got a question or two for Mr. Jim Tunney. Over 500 games he officiated in 3 Super Bowls. This is the man to ask. Go ahead, Jake.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Jim, it's an honor to talk to you. Number one, your guy obviously is so well respected around the game and the league. What I'd want to ask you is that as a guy that officiated, but I'm sure when you're watching games, you're somewhat grading officials yourself. How much have you seen the game just from a rules standpoint kind of slide to the offensive side? And I know obviously, a lot of things go into that, but, as a DB coach myself, just the lack of physicality out there, is that something that you guys kind of saw coming just like it does in other sports with the NBA? And how hard is it? Because TV doesn't do it justice. Us being able to see slow motion is so much easier than the referees. Just when you're officiating DBs versus wide receivers, how hard is that?
It's a difficult task, particularly pass interference. Wide receivers and defensive backs have a difficult time. We've allowed them now to have what we call tactile contact. As long as you don't change the direction of a player, you can touch him. The offensive player trying to reach out to the defensive guy and see where he is. The defensive guy not wanting the offensive guy to get too far ahead. The rules have changed a lot because the game has changed. The players are bigger and stronger and faster now than they've ever been. I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 20 years when these current players are having children. They're going to be 8 foot tall and 300 pounds and move
quarterback.
Move like a running back. The game changes every year because often the competition committee sits down and says, is the offense getting more powerful than the defense, or the defense getting more powerful than the offense? Now, one of the reasons that you see more offensive time this year is that they want the players to score. Fans want to see score. They don't want to see a 3-0 football game. They'd rather have it 35-36 and a lot of scoring. That's exciting for the fans. And then, of course, it gives the players, I'm not a big fan of this, but it gives the players the chance to do their fancy dance in the end zone. That's a fan thing. Officials could care less about that. Yeah. But we're going to work the game the way the rules committee decides it, and then a lot of leniency now.
I got a question for you, Mr. Tunney, from one of our listeners. Got a text from Maury Gaston, friend of the show and friend of mine, Beta Theta from down in Auburn. It said, ask Mr. Tunney, and he's a big fan of yours, is again, followed your career from the beginning. Did Mr. Jim Tunney, did you know Ronnie Baines, former head of NFL officials and a Beta Theta alumnus from Auburn? He's got a grandson that was just initiated to the Sigma Nu chapter at Auburn, but I don't know. Did you get a chance? Did you know him?
I knew Ron Baines. Now that he has 2 sons working in the NFL now.
Wow.
Alan and Leslie are both Baines' children, and both do a very good job. Rusty and Alan Baines, very, very competent people, very knowledgeable about the rules, and very, very posture on the field is very, very good. It all comes from their dad, Ron. I think Ron did a great job, and when you have 2 sons working in the NFL, you got to be awfully proud of that.
Absolutely. That's kind of like the Manning family equivalent for NFL officials to have that.
I wonder, Rob, if you got a family full of officials, if somebody doesn't do the dishes, if you walk in and somebody throws a flag on somebody in the kitchen.
that would be a wild one to watch. But hey, let's say this. Jimmy Hodge is on here with us as well. And Jimmy, I know you've been all over the place today, but you're on with Jim Tunney, the Dean of NFL Officials. And this is great stuff, Mr. Tunney. Again, thank you so much for being with us. But Jimmy, come on in.
Yeah, Mr. Tunney, I think you officiated a record 10 conference championship games and 3 Super Bowls. And since we're 2 days away from another Super Bowl, are there any of the 3 Super Bowl games that stand out in particular due to any, just unusual circumstances that happened throughout the game, or just other things that you remember?
Every one of them was very, very exciting for me. To get my first Super Bowl in 1972 when I was just 42 years of age. That was the youngest referee in the Super Bowl. What probably stands out for me is Super Bowl 11. Super Bowl 11 was in Pasadena Rose Bowl. And I kind of grew up in that Rose Bowl. My dad was a referee. So I went to games when he was working for Pasadena Junior College. And there's a little kid running back there named Jackie Robinson. And I sat on the bench next to Jackie Robinson. And my dad refereed the Rose Bowl game in 1947. And then 30 years later to the month, 1977, I get a chance to work the Super Bowl game between Oakland Raiders and Minnesota Vikings. To work in the same place that my dad worked in a bowl game like that was a great thrill for me to have that great honor of being able to do that. And then when I was a little kid, at 8 or 9 years of age, sitting on the Pasadena Junior College bench alongside of Jackie Robinson, he wasn't much then. He's a great running back. We knew Jackie Robinson. He's a great person that he had become through the Brooklyn Dodgers and through all of his lifetime. So it was a great honor for me to work in the Rose Bowl with all the history that was in my family.
When you look back, and I'm going to go before we go back to Jake Crane, Mr. Tunney, again, this weekend, you got the Chiefs trying to win that second Super Bowl row. Patrick Mahomes, just an amazing quarterback, really a great representative for the NFL. And Andy Reid, man, he's had a lot of success in his life. He's had some terrible things happen off the field in his life, and just I love the guy. And I tell you something. Pat Jr. was talking on the show back in late June about losing his dad June 1st, and I literally was my mind was blown. The thousands of texts and phone calls from people, and said he got one from a guy talking about, I met your dad in 1980 when I was at Brigham Young, and he was the coach at Wyoming. We played a 56-49, and he talked about what his dad meant over the years, knowing Coach Dye and all. And it was Andy Reid, the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, sent that. And just that really meant a lot to Pat Jr. And he's just one of the guys that just is amazing to me. He won at Philadelphia. He's on the verge of a second straight Super Bowl at Kansas City. And then Bruce Arians. I mean, how can you not like Bruce Arians? And you get the chance to know these coaches. They're really special people, aren't they?
Andy Reid went to Marshall High School in Los Angeles, and I was coaching at Lincoln High School a little later. He came a little later. But Andy Reid won the pass, punt, and kick contest when he was 12 years old in the LA
Wow.
Coliseum. God. And he was a quarterback at USC, big, strong kid, not very powerful what he did, but he was a great kid out of Marshall High School and USC. And to have him do this, I talked to Andrew about that a couple of times, and we really reminisce about the fact that we both were Los Angeles City School people all the time. And Andy's done a wonderful job in Kansas City. Prior to Andy was my good friend Herm Edwards, who coached Kansas City. Didn't have the success that Andy's having, but Andy Reid really done a great job with it. And I wish him all the best on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Jake Crane, come on back in.
Yeah, well, something I think I'd like you to expand on, Mr. Tooney, is I don't think people realize and they understand how physical the NFL is. But if you've ever been on the sideline of an NFL game, or especially where you guys were on the field, can you just talk about just how violent the collisions are, how fast and how physical it really is out there? Because if you've ever been on the sideline of a game, it sounds like a bunch of bombs going off.
It's like watching two Mack trucks on I-40 running heavily into each other.
Wow.
And the collision that they have and the concussions that happen are because these players are so big and strong and fast. And sometimes they can't change direction like they want to. You get a guy who's 6'8" and 290 pounds, he doesn't change direction very quickly. It's the little scat backs that do that. So when sometimes these collisions occur, they're just so violent. And when standing on the sidelines is one thing, standing next to them is another.
Yeah.
I unfortunately hadn't watched a lot of those.
Well, you think about that, and Jimmy Hodge, when we talked earlier in the show about some of the games and 3 Super Bowls officiating, and was it Jimmy? I think you were saying it earlier today, and Mr. Tunney, you can add on to it, but about the 1972 Miami Dolphins team, Mercury Morris, they still get together, and I think they have a toast every year when the undefeated team finally loses a game, but still nobody has done it. The last chance, and Jimmy, you talked about this, was the Giants and the Patriots in 2007 when Eli Manning helped lead the Giants to the Super Bowl win. But that's just unbelievable. But Jimmy Hodge, come on back in with Mr. Jim Tunney.
It's
Yeah,
47. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Mr. Tony.
It was 47 years since that 1973 Miami Dolphins team went undefeated, and nobody got to that point. Some people got to 16 or 15, but never to 17. And I credit Coach Shula and the staff that he had and the players. And I met all of them: Bob Greasy, Larry Zonga, Jim Kick, Nick Bonacani. I knew them all very well and worked a lot of games with them. And they really are wonderful people, particularly the ones, and only the ones that are alive. Bonacani's gone, and some others. Coach Shula's passed away, but they're great people as well as great football players.
Yeah, they really are, and just incredible.
Well, yeah, Mr. Tony, your first Super Bowl was Super Bowl VI, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, we were just you were just talking about what it was like for two Mack trucks to collide at high speed in opposite directions, and I'd ask you on the first question if you had any memorable plays from for those Super Bowls, and I remember that Super Bowl VI, that was Tom Landry's first Super Bowl victory, and it was over the Dolphins. I think, it was 24-3, and I remember specifically that they got Bob Greasy for a 28-yard sack. And since you were the referee, I'm wondering, what were you thinking when you kept having to back up to try to chase that play down? Do you remember that play very well?
Very well. Bob Greasy and I have talked about that many times. He set a new and still a Super Bowl record for the largest amount of yards being sacked behind the line of scrimmage. And he said, and then Coach Shula says, but only Bob Lilly was chasing him. And Greasy said, no, there were three of them. And we looked at the film, and there were three guys chasing Bob Greasy, and he weaved back and forth in the end zone and field play, actually, in that Tulane Stadium. As I watched it, he ran into me about three times. So,
wow,
it's great, great memory. Yeah,
Mr. Tunney.
So technically, Mr. Tunney, you got half a sack in a Super Bowl then.
Yeah.
Mr. Tunney, I'll tell you a crazy story.
I'd like to work this one come the day after tomorrow or Sunday. I'd like to work again, but not anymore.
One crazy thing is I think the 1971 Cowboys team won the Super Bowl. My parents were out there and brought me back 47 autographed black and white pictures of everybody on that Cowboys team. Bob Lilly, Dwayne Thomas, Walt Garrison, put a pinch between your cheek and gum, Bob Hayes, Roger Staubach, Craig Morton. And they also brought me back a football autographed by every member of that Cowboys team. And what did I do? I'm up for a Darwin Award, I played football in the neighborhood growing up in the street and scuffed it all up and wasn't even well, I wonder what I could get for that on eBay today. But
yeah, so what? Hey, Rob, did it say Baby Ruth on it?
I'm telling you, but I remember, and Mr. Tunney, I still have I had the Vikings jersey number 10 when Fran Tarkenton, my parents were up there, brought me back, and I put it on, and it was like a nightgown. It went down to my feet. I looked like Cousin It from the Addams Family walking around with it. But Pat Dye Jr. was telling us on the show last Friday, he's a sports agent in Atlanta, said every morning he pulls up, the parking space next to him is Francis Tarkenton. And he always called his dad Patrick Fane Dye. They were teammates at Georgia. But talk about what it's like when you these guys, that the legends just get bigger over time, but these guys were really as good or better than what we hear about because they were so tough, and they weren't doing it for the money back then. They were doing it for the love of the game. And I'm not saying guys today don't do it for the love of the game, but for some of them, that money is so much that it kind of takes the incentive away. But what I grew up with, and what you and Jimmy and Jake and I grew up with, was a pure love of the game.
But mostly now, there's so much money involved that some of the players have lost the spirit that they had in the 60s and 70s, where they didn't play for the money. As you said, they played for the love of the game. And still, players love this football game. They love the game of football. And even though they're getting a lot of money now, you gotta have a passion for doing this thing, because you could have, and you think about this, any given play during a football game could take your season and your life away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gone. One play, and you never know. There's 156 plays in a game, and blocking and tackling, and all the thing goes on, and the one play could take your career away from you. So I applaud them. I enjoy the players we have, and enjoy the players today. And I think on Sunday you'll see a great play by both Mahomes and by Brady, as well as the other players on both teams.
Absolutely. And Mr. Tunney, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us. I know you got a lot going on out in Pebble Beach, California. By the way, what's the weather like out there today?
65 degrees.
sunny. And do you still get out and play golf on the course?
No, I've given that game up. I've played that game for about 20 years, and the game's ahead of me now. So I like to watch it. I watch golf on television. I watch it personally up here at the Pebble Beach Golf Course, places like that. But not playing anymore.
Yeah. Hey, Jake and Jimmy, any last question before we go?
Well, I don't have a question. I just want to tell Mr. Tunney, thank you for everything you've done for the game. It's all of us, the younger generation like me. I just want to say thank you. I appreciate all you did for the game. We love.
Jimmy, thank you very much. It's always nice to have you on the air and talk to you. And Rob, thanks again for this opportunity. I really enjoyed being on your show.
Absolutely. It's always an honor. And again, the game is what it is because of the hard work of men like you. And have a great weekend. We look forward to having you on again soon. That is Jim Tunney, former head of NFL officials, who's been with us here on Sidelines on the Friday afternoon, Sidelines.live podcast. And I want to say that as we go along Super Bowl weekend, it's hard to believe that it's here, guys. It's been almost a year since a lot of us have been in the office. We've been working remote, but one constant is, we all got W-2s and 1099s in the mail. The other one is we got the Super Bowl coming on this weekend, and we've gone a little bit of Sidelines extra today. We've had Jimmy Hodge was up there in the mountains and back in Cell Zone range. Jake Crane on the way back from Atlanta, but Jake, let's talk here for a few minutes before we go. Your thoughts on the Super Bowl this weekend? Kansas City Chiefs going for 2 in a row against Tom Brady, going for his personal 7th Super Bowl championship. It's never been done before in history. Who do you think is going to win? And then we'll go to you, Jimmy.
Oh, Rob, as hard as it is for me to bet against Tom, I just think Mahomes is a witch. I think, really, when I look at this game, I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as people think. And I believe there's going to be a big special teams play that changes the balance of the game. I think late, whether it's a punt return, block punt, big kick, maybe a kick out of bounds with under 3 minutes with the team up by 2 or less. I'm going to go with the Chiefs. As hard it is for me to bet against, the great Tom Brady, I just think Mahomes and those weapons with a little extra time to prepare with what Eric Bieniemy and them do from a motion standpoint. It's going to be tough for Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, 2 former Auburn guys on the outside, but I like the Chiefs by 4 or more.
All right. So thinking the Chiefs are going to get it done. This is going to be, wow. I mean, first year for Tom Brady. It's in Tampa at Raymond James Stadium. Still got to play the game on the grass. Jimmy Hodge, give us your thoughts, and we'll wrap things up.
Well, I think each team has one major concern. The Chiefs, I think, are going to be the first team in Super Bowl history to be playing the game without either of their starting 2 tackles, plus their starting left guard. That is a huge concern, and especially when you consider the fact that Tampa Bay defensively in the front 7 has really ramped up their intensity, and Sue is really starting to be a force out there. But at the same time, that Tampa Bay secondary is a major concern. So I really think the big key to the game is that if the Kansas City offensive line can give Mahomes time to throw the ball, move around, and just perform the normal magic that he does, then the Chiefs are going to be in good shape. But if they can't handle that Tampa Bay defensive front, then it could be a different story. But I look for a really intense, I'm not going to say high scoring, but I'm looking for something in that. Well, when you consider nowadays what's high scoring and so forth, but it's somewhere in that 31 to 27, 31 to 28 range. And I think it's just going to be a classic game and I think it's the first time we've ever had a Super Bowl with the starting, well, I guess maybe Lamar Jackson was the MVP last year, but with I was thinking it was back-to-back Super Bowl MVPs. I mean, you had Mahomes and Brady, but again, well, back-to-back Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. That's what I meant. Yeah. So it should be a sensational game, and I just have a feeling all of us are going to be able to relax, enjoy it, and just see a lot of great playmakers. And these truly are the best players in the world.
No doubt about it. Jake Crane, host of the J-Boy podcast. Jimmy Hodge, national college football, basketball, recruiting, football contributor. Again, y'all are, George Plimpton, bon voyant. So appreciate the finer things. You need to be wearing ascots when you're on the radio because you all love it. You appreciate it. You know it. I want to say thanks to our producer, Miss Audrey, who's